Picture this. You're in a group of 30 people. No police, no courts, no lawyers, no jails, no judges in robes making decisions from behind a big wooden desk. Just 30 humans, a fire, and a set of unwritten rules that everyone understands without ever being told. Now picture what happens when someone breaks one of those rules. Not a minor infraction, not forgetting whose turn it was to carry the water. Something serious. Stealing food from a child. Attacking a group member unprovoked. Taking someone's partner. In a world without institutions, without formal authority, without any of the systems we use today to handle that kind of thing, what actually happened? Because something happened. It always did. And the answer is simultaneously more sophisticated, more brutal, and more deeply human than anything you'd expect. This is the story of ancient justice, and it never needed a courthouse. Let's start with the thing that surprises everyone. Ancient human groups weren't lawless, not even close. The idea that prehistoric life was pure chaos, every man for himself, the strong taking what they wanted, the weak just suffering. That's a fantasy. A comfortable modern story we tell ourselves to feel better about having police and governments. The reality was almost the exact opposite. Hunter-gatherer groups, the closest living analogs we have to our prehistoric ancestors, are among the most intensely socially regulated communities ever documented. Anthropologists studying groups like the Hadza of Tanzania, the San of the Kalahari, and indigenous Amazonian communities consistently describe societies with extremely strong norms around sharing, fairness, conflict resolution, and collective behavior. The rules weren't written. They didn't need to be. They were enforced by something far more powerful than any legal code. They were enforced by everyone. All at once. All the time. Here's the mechanism that made it work. Anthropologists call it reverse dominance hierarchy. In most animal social groups, the biggest, strongest individual dominates, and everyone else falls in line. But in human hunter-gatherer groups, something remarkable evolved. The group collectively suppresses any individual who tries to dominate. The moment someone starts behaving like they're better than everyone else, taking more than their share, refusing to cooperate, bullying weaker members, the rest of the group doesn't just tolerate it. They coordinate against it. Gossip spreads. Alliances shift. The offending individual finds themselves increasingly isolated, excluded from food sharing, from coalition support, from the social fabric that in an ancient environment was quite literally the difference between life and death. This wasn't a formal punishment. There was no trial, but the effect was real, and it was devastating. A human cut off from their group in the ancient world wasn't just inconvenienced. They were in serious danger. Alone meant exposed to predators. Alone meant no help when injured. Alone meant no one to share food with in a lean season. The group was survival. Losing the group was potentially a death sentence. Now let's talk about what specific rule-breaking looked like and what happened next. Because ancient social norms weren't random. They clustered around a few key categories that directly threatened group survival. Food theft was treated with extraordinary seriousness. In a world where caloric scarcity was a constant background threat, stealing food from group members, especially from children or the elderly, wasn't just selfish. It was an attack on the group's collective survival. The response was swift and collective. Public shaming first. Loud, vocal, communal condemnation that left no ambiguity about what had happened and what everyone thought about it. Then exclusion from food sharing. The offender got no portion at the next distribution. In a system built on mutual sharing, that was brutal, and if the behavior continued, something more serious followed. Violence. Not spontaneous rage, but deliberate collective sanctioning. Multiple group members acting together to physically punish a persistent rule breaker. Documented in multiple hunter-gatherer societies studied by anthropologists. Not mob violence exactly, more like a community enforcing the only law enforcement it had. Sexual violence and partner theft were similarly treated as existential threats to group cohesion. A group that couldn't maintain basic trust between its members, that couldn't guarantee the safety of its women and the stability of pair bonds, was a group that would fracture, and a fractured group in the ancient world didn't survive long. The response to sexual violence in documented hunter-gatherer societies ranges from immediate group intervention to long-term coalition building against the offender. What it almost never is ignored. The idea of a prehistoric world where men simply took whatever they wanted from women is not supported by anthropological evidence from surviving traditional societies. Women in hunter-gatherer groups have documented social power, coalition networks, and allies who will act on their behalf. The offender had to contend not just with the victim, but with her entire social network, which in a group of 30 people is basically everyone. Let's talk about the most extreme punishment, because it existed: execution, the deliberate killing of a group member by the group itself. This sounds shocking from a modern perspective, but it is one of the most consistently documented phenomena across hunter-gatherer societies worldwide. Anthropologist Christopher Boehm spent decades studying this across hundreds of documented traditional societies and found that deliberate group-sanctioned killing of rule breakers, what he calls altruistic punishment, appears universally. The triggers were almost always the same: persistent, unchallengeable dominance behavior, the individual who kept taking more, kept refusing to cooperate, kept threatening others despite repeated social pressure. Or extreme violence, the individual who had killed or seriously harmed group members and showed no sign of stopping. The decision wasn't made by one person, it was collective. Often the execution was carried out by a close relative of the offender, which sounds cruel but served a specific social function. It demonstrated that the group's norms superseded even family loyalty, that no one was exempt, that the rules applied to everyone. Here's the part that nobody expects. Forgiveness was also built into the system. Ancient justice wasn't purely punitive. Hunter-gatherer conflict resolution consistently includes mechanisms for restoration, ways for an offender to re-enter the group's good graces after demonstrating genuine change. Public apology, redistribution of resources, performing extra work for the group, demonstrating changed behavior over time. The goal wasn't permanent exclusion in most cases. Permanent exclusion was expensive. Losing a skilled hunter or an experienced forager cost the group real survival capacity. So the system was calibrated to correct behavior and restore cooperation wherever possible. Punishment was real and sometimes severe, but it was a means to an end, not an end in itself. The end was always a functioning group, a group that could hunt together, share food, raise children, defend itself, and survive another season. Justice in the ancient world wasn't about retribution, it was about repair, about getting 30 people back to working together after something had threatened to tear them apart, which, when you think about it, is exactly what justice is supposed to be for. We just forgot that somewhere along the way. So the next time you sit in traffic, quietly furious at someone who cut you off and knowing nothing will happen to them, spare a thought for the ancient version of that moment. 30 people, a fire, and absolutely everyone watching. In that world, there was nowhere to hide. No anonymity, no bureaucratic delays, no technicalities. Just the group, the rules, and the very clear understanding that one had consequences and the other did not. Ancient justice was immediate, collective, and deeply personal. It had to be. The alternative was chaos, and chaos got you killed. So the next time you sit in traffic, quietly furious at someone who cut you off, and knowing nothing will happen to them, spare a thought for the ancient version of that moment. 30 people, a fire, and absolutely everyone watching. In that world, there was nowhere to hide. No anonymity, no bureaucratic delays, no technicalities. Just the group, the rules, and the very clear understanding that one had consequences and the other did not. Ancient justice was immediate, collective, and deeply personal. It had to be. The alternative was chaos, and chaos got you killed.